Hello, Hub City kids. How are you doing today? I hope you had a great week. I would love to hear how spending a week practicing gratitude went. Did you come up with some really good things? Did you notice it changing your attitudes at all when you just spent some time, whether it was a time that you were feeling happy or sad, just thinking through all of the good things that you have been given in your life? Did that change anything? I know it always helps me. And that's one reason that I really like being outside. When I'm feeling sad or frustrated, I go for a walk because I'm reminded of all of the beautiful things that God has given me and placed on this earth, and it just makes me really happy and feel calm. And just practicing that gratefulness, it's really good for my heart. And God likes it too when I give him the praise and the credit for all of those good things. Because remember, we've talked about every good and perfect thing comes from above. So hopefully that was very worthwhile for all of you. So that was what we talked about last week. Remember, we start off with reviewing what we talked about before, and we talked about the Israelites were worshiping. And worship can look like a lot of different things. It can be corporate, which means a whole group of people, or it can be individual, which is just you by yourself. It can be out loud, it can be in your head, it can be with words, it can be with your body. There are lots of different ways to worship. But really, the point of worship is remembering who God is and giving him the credit for what he has done, because he is worthy of it. Do you remember that? Everything that he did, he likes to hear us thank him for it. Just like when we clean our room, we like to have somebody say, "You did a good job." God likes that too. And he loves when we take the time to thank him for that. So that is what we talked about last week. And specifically, that song of praise that the Israelites did after God walked them through the Red Sea, after they were stuck in this impossible situation between a sea and an army, and God did this huge miraculous thing where he parted the waters between the sea and made a path for his people to walk through where there was no path. He performed a miracle, this amazing, wonderful thing that could not be explained, and none of those people could do it by themselves. God did it for them. So that's important for you to remember all of that, because we're going to read this next passage. And this is the passage that comes directly after they finish praising in Exodus. They're singing and praising and dancing and saying, "God, you are amazing," up till verse 21. And then verse 22, well, let's just see what happens. It's a very short passage. There's only 5 verses. So I'm going to do something a little bit different today, and I'm actually going to read it for you and to you and with you. So this is Exodus 15, starting at 22. Then Moses made Israel set out from the Red Sea, and they went into the wilderness of Shur. They went 3 days in the wilderness and found no water. When they came to Marah, they could not drink the water of Marah because it was bitter. Therefore, it was named Marah. And the people grumbled against Moses, saying, "What shall we drink?" And he cried to the Lord, and the Lord showed him a log, and he threw it into the water, and the water became sweet. There the Lord made for them a statute and a rule, and there he tested them, saying, "If you will diligently listen to the voice of the Lord your God, and do what is right in his eyes, and give ear to his commandments, and keep all his statutes, I will put none of the diseases on you that I put on the Egyptians, for I am the Lord, your healer." Then they came to Elim, where there were 12 springs of water and 70 palm trees, and they encamped there by the water. So now I do want you to pause the video and talk through with your family what you remember. What are some things that stuck out to you about that passage? You can even just say the things that you remember from the passage. You can think through what happened before and now what the Israelites are doing. So, ready? Pause the video. Great. So this is a pretty big change from 3 days before. They're sitting on the banks of the sea, a body of water, which God proved to them that he had complete control over the water. That the water listened to him, his words and his commandments, and that he could do something that didn't make any sense whatsoever, had never been done before, and that the water would listen to God. And now, 3 days later, they come to another body of water, a much smaller body of water. It's a stream, a very probably small stream in the middle of a desert. And they come to this, they taste it, obviously, because they know it was bitter. So they took a little sip of it and say, gross. This water is not good. We are going to die of starvation or thirst, and what are we going to do? And we're destitute. And they start complaining and questioning again what God's plan is and are ready to go back to Egypt. That seems pretty crazy, right? It seems really funny that 3 days after this, they're already complaining. They've already forgotten all of the things that God has done for them. Even thinking through before that, God turned the Nile into blood. He has proven that he has control over everything here on earth. That something like the bitterness of a stream, it doesn't even come across any of their brains that God could take care of them, that he could change the water to make it so that it was drinkable. And it's pretty easy for us to judge these poor Israelites and all of their complaining and whining and lack of trust. It's pretty easy for us to think, like, how silly are you? 3 days ago, God did this amazing thing. But think through your life. How often are you guilty of complaining and whining when things aren't going the way that you want them to go? Has your mom or your dad ever said to you, please stop your whining? I know I say that to my kids. I know people say it to me. My kids sometimes say it to me when I'm whining at them to stop their whining. It's really easy to whine. But it doesn't ever really feel good, does it? Do your parents ever say to you, can you just ask me nicely? Probably. Do you remember that all of the time in the moment? Not always, I'm sure. Sometimes are there consequences for your whining? Probably. Sometimes when you whine, your parents say, if you would ask me nicely, I'm not going to give that to you. But you didn't, so now you're not going to get it because you were whining about it. Have you ever thought about the fact that when you whine or complain, you're in a way telling your family that you don't trust them to take care of you? This is kind of what's happening in this passage with the Israelites and God. God has taken care of them over and over and over and over again in ways that are amazing and miraculous, And here they come to another event and they say, God, we're so thirsty. What are we going to do? And that's saying, even if it's not, sometimes they even say it directly, God, you can't take care of us. You are not big enough. You are not good enough. You are not capable enough to take care of me. And that's what we're saying to our parents often. And that's what we say to God too. So could God, here's a question for you, could God have taken them to that water and made it sweet before they even got there? He absolutely could have. How would that have changed the story, you think? If that water had never been bitter when they got there, how would that have changed the Israelites' hearts? What do you think? Surely there are lots of times in our lives where things have worked out well for us. And we usually don't think about that as being a blessing. Often we don't think about it at all. It just is the way that it is. But then when things go wrong, and then hopefully they go right afterwards, we can see God's hand in that. This whole story is a way that God is teaching. It says he's testing his people. He is teaching his people to be reliant on him. That's a big word. Do you know what that word means? Reliant. It means that they are expecting and hoping and needing God to take care of them. Who is the hero of this story? It's God. That's what we've been talking about this whole time. It is not the Israelites. It is not Moses. Even in this, Moses threw the log into the water. But did Moses change the water from bitter to sweet? No, God did. Moses was being obedient to God, and he threw the log in for God, but he did not change the water. Just like the Israelites did not change the water from bitter to sweet. God did all of that. And we will see throughout this whole story of Exodus that God is teaching his people that you are not the hero of this story. I am. And you need to trust me that I will take care of you. And that's the same for our stories too. We might not be chased by an army of Egyptians, and maybe God has never parted an entire sea in front of you or changed water from bitter to sweet. But he can take bitter moments in our life and make them sweet. He can take bitter experiences in our life and make them good. And we just need to trust that he can. And we can see from the story of the Israelites, it's not easy. And you won't ever succeed fully. We can't. That's why we need Jesus. That's part of what God is showing us in our reliance, that we are going to fail over and over and over again. We could work so hard at not grumbling and complaining, and we'll still fail because we are human and we need Jesus so badly. So that's what this story is about. It's not just about water. It's about God taking care of the people that he loves, despite the fact that we fail all of the time, and that we need him to turn our lives from bitter to sweet. And we can't do anything to earn that. We can't do anything to fix our own situations. We can't pay enough money. We can't do all the right things often enough. Only Jesus can do that. And that's really good news, because again, we'll fail miserably every single time. So this week, we are going to remember again and remind each other that God is the hero of our stories. And as kind of a fun little way to experience this bitterness versus sweet, I want you to try that. Try something that's really bitter and tastes. Bitter is kind of a specific kind of taste. So cranberries, for example, are an example of something that's bitter. Usually it's hard to find a full cranberry because they're covered in sugar because they don't taste very good. So you can Google some bitter foods or try a cranberry and then eat a bite of honey afterwards or a piece of candy. And remind ourselves and each other that that bitterness is washed away by the sweetness of God. So have a fantastic week, Hub City kids. I miss you, and I will see you all soon.